Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the season finale of Rick and Morty Fear No Mort. And I really enjoyed this. I think this was a good Morty-centric episode, while also kind of factoring in stuff that goes on with Rick, but also just a good one of how it utilized its concept, how it kind of went through, and was a nice kind of season ender, for me. And I can't wait to see what else they kind of do in the other ones. I think this wrapped up the season nicely, and overall I'm more kind of positive on this season because of what they were able to kind of accomplish with the changing of the voice actors and what they were able to do with certain kind of concepts in certain kind of episodes. Not everything completely hit, but I'm overall still like, yeah, I'm still into Rick and Morty. So, this one pops up, we get in and we see that they're in this weird kind of crazy looking place, and they're like, because it's kind of the stinger, nothing's really kind of like scaring them. It's like, yeah, this thing's going at him and being like, yeah, I'm gonna get your spleen. It's like, whatever, man, I don't even care. And they're like, man, we can't really get scared or anything anymore. And this weird creepy dude in his suit's like, oh yeah, you want really like scares or whatnot? I know this place on Earth. Is like, yeah, we're gonna go in there anyway. Let's kind of go for it. And the dude takes him there, and it's a Denny's, and they're like, what the fuck? Come on, man. And there's like, it's in the Denny's, and talking about how it's in the bathroom, and that it's called the fear hole. And they're like looking at it, it's like, well, what do we do with this? Do we go into this? Do we not touch the sides? Is there like spikes in the pit? What the fuck's going on here? It's like, it's had to have been here for a little bit. I mean, it's got a VCR and shit, so they kind of play it. We see the dude giving the whole kind of spiel that it takes your kind of greatest fear, and it either feeds on you, or until you pretty much die, or if you come out, you have conquered your greatest fear, and you get your photo on the fear wall. And they had ordered all this kind of food at Denny's and everything like that, which, if they're doing a kind of product placement thing with Denny's, sure. I mean, Denny's has like been in there for a good while and utilized this location, so it really didn't like pump up too much. They just had random kind of food, and Rick's like, this shit's getting cold, let's go back and eat. Morty runs back in, jumps in, we see Rick jump in after him. He's getting like taken on by these like weird monster creatures. They kind of like fight their way, and they think they're out of it, but they're kind of leery if they are. And we find they kind of get home, they kind of talk about the kind of experience they had before another Rick from another universe dies, and we see that Diane is there, and we see Rick kind of going through this whole thing, trying to kind of explain it to her, trying to kind of like get her back. Morty kind of being on the wayside and trying to figure out kind of how he fits into this whole thing and how Diane fits into the whole dynamic. Rick utilizing de-aging serum, but of course it's only going to make him look younger. It's not going to make him be the Rick that was to this Diane, and him trying to explain like the whole infinite universe and multiversal kind of concept, and that this is, for all intents and purposes, their daughter, even though it's a different kind of universe, or it could be a clone and all that kind of jazz, before she kind of like gets into kind of a rhythm, and we actually see Rick and Diane kind of like going on their own kind of little adventures. We see Morty kind of feeling a little bit left out and trying to figure out what's going on with this, but he sees that Rick is kind of wasting away and getting kind of sicker. He's like, we're in the fear hole, and it's feeding on you, and he has to kind of figure out what Rick's fear is that it's kind of feeding on him. And he kind of finds the fear hole dude, wondering if it's a promoter or whatnot, and pretty much brings up and lays down the fact that Rick is afraid of happiness, and like afraid that happiness will be it's temporary, it will leave, and that he'll lose Diane, and afraid of his own kind of happiness, and that's kind of what the hole is feeding on. And then Morty's pretty much getting onto his like acceptance stuff and being like made fun of and all that kind of jazz. So he starts kind of trying to overload the fear hole, doing all these weird kind of crazy things, feeding on his fears, showing weird shit to bullies, getting into this weird kind of play, and we see that it's also feeding on him and him looking sickly as well, before Rick pops up and kind of understanding what's kind of going on. And then we see them do this kind of thing where they do this kind of musical number to this weird kind of play, and the dude kind of like accepts them, and then we start seeing them kind of run through and trying to figure out all these different kind of fear things from the hole as they keep coming out and popping back in and everything like that. And they're like, ah, shit. Now, granted, the repetition here kind of works because they understand that the whole bit isn't to just keep repeating these kind of things, but to eventually get to the revelations that are following. So they paced it well enough, at least for me, to not be like weary of it as we see different kind of things that are kind of scaring Morty or whatnot as he's like kind of getting through to him before he gets to the last bit where Rick calls him irreplaceable. He's like, I'm afraid that you would never say that to me in real life because of all the infinite kind of Mortys and everything like that and how Rick kind of treats him. Before that is the last thing that kind of pops him out and gets that Rick wouldn't follow him into the fear hole to save him because he's to Rick not irreplaceable. But we learned that Rick's like, it's like one fear at a time. What if your fear was water? My fear was fire. Really wouldn't mix. But Morty's able to get out of the hole and kind of deal with that. Like, even though he has conquered his fear, it's still kind of there because Rick didn't follow him in. Because he then brought up the whole bit about Diane, and we get a kind of fake out of they go back to their food, but then Rick kind of pops in, almost similar to Morty in the beginning of the episode, but instead of jumping in for like the whole Diane bit, he just puts Morty's picture onto the fear wall, and then we get the last stinger at the end of Mr. Poopy Butthole talking about the season and everything, and having stolen a portal gun from Rick, and then pretty much killing another Mr. Poopy Butthole, and that is still married to Amy and taking his place, but Amy is immediately suspicious. So we'll see how that kind of works out in the next kind of seasons and whatnot kind of pops up. So I really liked how this episode delved into Morty's kind of character development and his biggest kind of fear of Rick not jumping in after him and not thinking that he is irreplaceable. That kind of fear of being unaccepted by his grandfather after everything that has kind of gone on in all their kind of adventures. And him being able to come to terms with that was interesting. Now, granted, I don't think it's completely gone away. He's out of the fear hole and it's not feeding on him. But I still think that's in the back of his mind because Rick didn't jump in to save him and to help him with everything that was kind of going on with it. But that isn't really the Rick that we know of. He could potentially get to that kind of point, but he's still that kind of asshole, even though he has gotten better as the seasons have gone on and does begrudgingly do stuff to help other people and to help Morty specifically. But he's not at that point where he thinks that Morty's irreplaceable, at least in Morty's mind. So it's kind of cool to see Morty kind of deal with that and try to understand that, because I did like how they supposedly did the whole fear hole thing, and then the thing that really hit was that he turned into Jerry as he was growing up. It's like, fuck, I'm still in the fear hole. And dealing with all of his different kind of fears, one after another, before like the big one that was pretty much holding him in the fear hole of his acceptance of, by Rick. And I think it was well done and well executed. It didn't come off as weird or too strangely paced or too joke-filled or anything like that. We had comedy that organically flowed throughout everything without undermining the seriousness of what was going on, because Morty has a right to wonder if Rick would help or save him and how he would do it, because Rick's nihilism and just misanthropy would get to a point of just like, fuck it, I could either get another Morty or make another Morty, and that would be that. Even though he's got all these kind of clone bodies that he could technically revive them in, it's would he do it? And that being in Morty's mind is an interesting insight into his character, even throughout all these kind of adventures. So I liked getting into that, even though we've gotten to a point that he's attempting to be a little bit more assertive around Rick. Definitely trying to figure out things more on his own and deal with the problems that he sometimes creates when he's on these adventures. It's cool to see that kind of growth, but also to see that he still has problems and issues that he's got to deal with. And that's why I really liked it, because we did a nice character dive into who he is at this point, what he's learned, and what he can potentially need to go and break through in next seasons if they decide to focus on those kind of character growth. So it was a nice kind of thing that I liked, that they focused on Morty in this way to get a nice kind of character feel on him and to see where we could potentially go with his stories going forward. We've also seen that with Rick and helping other people and not being as high and mighty, I'm the smartest motherfucking thing in the universe kind of spiel, and seeing that there are other weirder, crazier things, especially with evil Morty throughout the different kind of curve, and also dealing with the Rick that had killed Diane and taken out Diane as well throughout the multiverse. So we'll see what his kind of character growth and everything will be going on going forward as well. His are kind of smaller than Morty's at this point, but they are still big steps for him as a character. So I just liked the concept that they were able to do in this episode, and I can't wait to see what other kind of concepts we get in next seasons. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.